Shana Tova. Just over 4 months ago, Rachel and I were sitting in the recovery room filled with every emotion imaginable. We were filled with joy, with awe, with fear, and with a good dose of anxiety. The emotions likely every parent has felt in the early days of holding that new life. Up until March of Rachel's pregnancy, we assumed our baby would immediately become a fixture at Temple Emanu-El, cooing downstairs at the MJCCA Schiff preschool, being passed between teens and adults on Sundays at the Diamond Family Religious School, and just generally becoming a part of the fabric of the building. In our imagination, in the before times, grandparents were coming in and out of the room. Friends were seeing Zohara and us in the hospital, and there would be a baby naming celebration in the sanctuary in the brand new social hall. We would be surrounded by constant love and attention in Zohara's first weeks. I don't have to tell you what changed. We learned of Zohara's congenital heart defect 2 weeks after her birth. After the pandemic hit, the image of our family being physically surrounded by our community quickly changed too. All of our plans changed. We weren't the only ones. Your weddings, your b'nai mitzvah, your birthday parties were canceled, postponed, as though simcha, as though happiness was put on hold. More than that, funerals were made unattendable. Shivas went virtual. And when we needed the physical presence of our community most, we could only have a socially distant air hug or blow kisses to one another. Under normal circumstances, our Jewish tradition teaches that it takes a village to raise a child, to celebrate at a wedding, to comfort the mourner, to pray with the sick. However, in these physically distant global pandemic times, that village, that tribe, that community that Rachel spoke of in her Rosh Hashanah sermon takes on all new definition and importance. The biggest challenge I believe we have faced and will continue to face is the ways that we maintain our friendships, the core of our community. We often tell a story of Choni the circle maker. Now I know all of my 9th and 10th graders from my class on Sundays already know all about Choni. Choni the circle maker is a famous man in the Talmud. However, when we tell Choni's story, we don't usually tell the actual ending of the tale. The story goes something like this. One day, Choni was walking along the road when he saw a certain man planting a carob tree. Carob trees aren't common around this part of the world, but carob is like very, very bitter chocolate. I don't really recommend it. Choni said to the man, "How many years will it take for this tree to bear fruit?" The man said to Choni, "One carob tree takes 70 years to produce edible fruit." Choni said to him, "Do you think that you're going to live another 70 years? Do you expect to benefit from this tree right here?" The man said to Choni, "When I was born, I found a world full of carob trees. So just as my ancestors planted for me, I plant for my children and their children." Now, this is usually where we stop telling the story. A lovely tale of planning for the future, a story about investing in the fruits of our labors that we will never see. However, the story doesn't end here, and the story goes on and teaches an even bigger lesson. After talking to the man planting the carob tree, Choni sat and ate a very, very big lunch. He was so full from that lunch that he took a nap more intense than any Thanksgiving nap ever taken. You know what I'm talking about. He slept for so long that rocks and dirt started to form around him. He disappeared from sight so that none of his family could find him when they went to go look for him. He slept for 70 years. When he woke up, he saw a man who looked oddly like the guy who was planting the carob tree from before Choni took his nap. Only this man was gathering carob pods from the same tree that was only a sapling 70 years ago when Choni went to sleep. Choni asked the man, "Are you the one who planted this tree?" The man said to Choni, "I'm his grandson." Choni said to himself, "Have I really slept for 70 years? Choni looked around, and to his surprise, he saw that the orchard around him was filled with all kinds of fruit growing from the trees, where before they had only been tiny little saplings in the ground. Choni was worried and went to his home. When he opened the door, he asked the first person he saw, "Is the son of Choni the circle maker alive?" They said to Choni, "His son is no longer alive, but his grandson's alive." Choni, in shock and surprise, said to them, "I am Choni the circle maker." But no one in his house believed him, not even his grandson. So Choni went to the school where he used to learn and teach. When he opened the door to one classroom, he heard the teachers, the rabbis, say amongst themselves, "No one in our school is as smart as Choni the circle maker. For when Choni would enter the study hall, he could answer any question that anyone had." At that very moment, Choni entered the study hall and said to them, "I am Choni." But they did not believe him, and they kicked him out of the school. Choni became very upset and depressed. Choni prayed to God for mercy and died. This is where the story of Choni truly ends. Now the Talmud adds a moral, a lesson to the end, like any good story has, to teach the phrase, "Give me friendship or give me death. Chevruta or mituta. Give me friendship or give me death." As friendship is what makes life worth living. Choni's time travel sheds a light on something we know all too well today. Months upon months of quarantine, physical distancing, and mask wearing have the all too easy potential to be isolating and leave us feeling like we are adrift, or maybe quarantined for months under a proverbial pile of rocks, even when we are literally at home, surrounded by our community. We shouldn't underestimate the strain that loneliness has played in our physical and mental health these many months. A few weeks ago, when we had Diamond Family Religious School drive-through party, I remember being overwhelmed with emotion as family after family came through to say hello, as the teens filled the campus with their usual energy, and as everything looked almost normal. While my heart swelled with love for our Temple Emanu-El families, I was aching because of an invisible 6-foot barrier and masks that kept us apart. What occurred to me that day was how greatly I had taken for granted the power of living in a community, our community. In many cases, we define Judaism as a personal journey, but when we do so at the risk of losing the most powerful value of being Jewish, Kehillah, thriving in a community. Even in our most basic texts in the Torah, we have the tradition of the minyan. From the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, God would have spared the cities for 10 righteous people, a minyan. Through the centuries and millennia, the importance of a minyan is embedded in Jewish culture. in prayers for joyous times, in times of sorrow. We need a minyan. We need a community. A Jewish community cannot exist without a people who come together. In the 12th century, Maimonides commented on a famous command in rabbinic literature, Kineh lecha chaver, acquire a friend for yourself. Maimonides says that friendship is the most important because we process life's joys and oys through the lens of our friendships. Basically, whenever we laugh or cry, it's always more powerful, more poignant, more purposeful with a friend. Unfortunately, COVID has erected plexiglass walls between friends. While we still might be able to laugh and cry with friends, we lack the all-important factor of touch, of holding a hand, wrapping an arm around a shoulder, or giving a hug. Friendship under COVID is evolving just as the Jewish community evolves under COVID. And with some combination of Zoom rooms and FaceTime calls and text messages, socially distant gatherings, our relationships almost seem normal. We might feel a lot like Choni, exasperated at only seeing our friends, our colleagues, our family, but not truly feeling like we can have the relationships of before. This reminds me of a lot of a classic Rodgers and Hammerstein musical, Carousel. Twice during the show, the characters sing one of my favorite numbers, You'll Never Walk Alone. First, when the leading female protagonist, Julie Jordan, loses her husband, Billy Bigelow, Julie is comforted by an old friend with the words of this song. When you walk through a storm, hold your head up high and don't be afraid of the dark. As the musical ends, Billy is given the opportunity to redeem himself by returning to earth for one day before going to heaven. And the entire cast sings these inspiring words one last time. Walk on, with hope in your heart, and you'll never walk alone. You'll never walk alone. The words are meant for Julie, Julie's daughter Louise, and for all of us to remember that throughout adversity, we do not journey alone. No woman or man is an island. When we are divided by physical distancing and even by the afterlife, we are always accompanied by our community. At the very beginning of the Torah, when God creates the first human, God calls the human good, just like God describes the previous 5 days of creation. In this version of creation, the first human isn't male or female. In fact, Adam, in Hebrew, just means human. After God creates this good Adam, this good human, God realizes that something is imperfect with this good creation. Adam is alone. In order for Adam to truly be good, Adam needs a partner. Lo tov heyot Adam levado. It's not good for a human to be alone. From the very core of our Torah, Bereshit, in the beginning, partnership, friendship, and relationship are all key to our definition of self. If this is how God intended human beings to live, with friends, with family, with spouses, or in a community, then it should come as no surprise when Choni despairs in exasperation and in deep loneliness. The same can be said for Julie Jordan and her daughter Louise. Losing a husband, a father, a friend is lo tov, not good. But that is why we are given the gift of community. And if the song is to be believed, we are never truly alone. Maybe you've lost someone or lost an opportunity that you were eagerly awaiting over the past 6 months. maybe you found a solution for shaking the loneliness that works for you. In my quarantine, I found 3 actions that work for me. Make time, pick up the phone, and actively learn. Make time to see your friends safely. That might mean gathering outdoors for a meal, a walk, or just to sit at the edge of a driveway and talk. This isn't only good COVID advice, this is every year and anytime advice. However, especially because our days tend to blur together under COVID, making time for community is what will help us thrive. Pick up the phone. The phenomenon of loneliness is ironically happening at a time when we are more connected than ever. I can FaceTime with friends from around the globe, but it won't happen if I don't first make the time and then simply reach out and say hi. We will maintain or grow our most valued relationships when we use our phone to call the people we care about most. Finally, we should all be actively learning. At the end of the Choni story, Choni becomes most exasperated when he enters the study hall and is actively unwelcomed by the students and teachers. Nothing deepens a relationship, makes us more vulnerable, and builds friendships like learning together. Had Choni found a friend in the study hall, our story would have surely ended differently. Choni, a man lost in time, might have adapted to his new reality, found love within his new family, made new friends, and lived to enjoy the fruits of his labors. Instead, he found the future and his life have little meaning without friendship, without love, without a community. These 3, making time, picking up the phone, and actively learning are not only important during this time under COVID, but God willing, one day we will live without the fear of a global pandemic, and these 3 actions will remain ever relevant. In fact, they come right from our sages of old who distilled the most important actions a person can take in a slightly different way. They said we should take a long walk, read a good book, and most importantly, make a new friend. No matter the age or the era, the most important Jewish advice has been to feed our mind, our body, and soul, and to do so in the comfort and security of community. In the ethical will of Asher ben Yechiel, the 13th century German and Spanish scholar, he left his community these enduring words: do not raise your hand against your neighbor. Never be weary of making friends. Consider one enemy as too many. If you have a faithful friend or even friends, hold them close. Do not let them go, for they are a precious possession. Being Jewish means that we are never alone, even virtually. Even if we must quarantine by ourselves in our homes, we are not truly alone. Our Temple Emanu-El community is ever present and will always be there for us when we call out. Let's sing that song we used to sing from way back when. The song to remind us to keep our head held high when we face a stormy sky. It takes a community to survive and to thrive. And as Jews, we have our community around us no matter where we are. Truly, we never walk alone. Shana Tova.